are recording. Sorry about the delay.
Awesome.
It's been a crazy morning so far. How are you doing, Kip?
It's all good. It's all good, Dante. It's nice to be able to chat with you.
Yeah, man. Where are you at today? Where are you in the world?
I am in beautiful Princeton, New Jersey, which is a little college town about 45 miles south of New York.
Are you from there? Are you born and raised there?
No, I moved here about 5 years ago with my partner. She works at the university, so we live here, and it's actually really cool.
Cool. How
Got
long?
good record store, Princeton Record Exchange, good used record store.
Really?
Yeah, man.
I think that's the beauty of living near college, I guess, right? Like, there's still that, like, need for art, like, when you're young and excited. Like, I think when you move to, like, a vacation town, like I live in, like Santa Barbara, it's just kind of like, or the arts. What about the arts,
Oh no, but I love Santa Barbara, man. Like I've been there. You've like pomegranates growing on the tree at Christmas time.
Totally.
I thought it's like it's a big joke that's played on the rest of the country that no one, like, people don't all live in Santa Barbara. I was like, wait a second, I'm going to the beach. I'm looking at lemons growing on people's trees in their front yard, and it's December 28th. I'm like, joke's on me, man. Here in New Jersey, I'm shoveling.
Oh my! That's wild, man. Yeah. So you've always been from the East Coast. You're the East Coast boy.
Yeah, man. I grew up in sort of the Philadelphia suburbs area, but then I went out to school in Portland, Oregon, when I was 18, and stayed out there a little after that too. So for about 7 years, I lived out in the Northwest, and it was a pretty cool time of my life because there was like a real music scene there, and I just got to learn so much about sort of different kinds of bands, different kinds of people, different kinds of art communities and stuff living out there when I did. And it really, even though I grew up on the East Coast, I feel like that experience shaped me a lot in terms of that time of my life and the kind of music and like aesthetic that I like,
Yeah. Could you give us some insight to the different vibes between Philadelphia and Portland? I feel like they're kind of similar. But maybe
sure,
I'm wrong.
I think Philadelphia is really rad now, and there's so much going on, and there probably was when I was a kid too. I was just too young to access it,
Totally.
There's like, when you're like a teenager and you're just kind of going to like hardcore and punk shows and like church basements and stuff.
Totally.
You're like, oh, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But then I think as I went out to Portland, there's just like a DIY music scene that wasn't rooted purely in like hardcore and punk. It was like it was a different kind of music, but still had the same sort of values that I liked. I always liked the politics and the values of that scene, but sort of with hardcore, it's not like I didn't love it, but it's not like I didn't like it, but it didn't speak to me the same way as when I was starting to hear like indie pop bands and things like that out in Portland. There's this group called Dear Nora that was really cool, and they would play all the time at just house shows, and not being 21, all I could really go to was house shows, basement shows, that kind of thing. And seeing like just sort of a community of bands that toured through there. Like this is a long time ago, so I know they're like bigger now. Like Mates Have Stayed, or like the Lucksmiths. These are Isler's Set. Like a lot of sort of like indie pop, like sort of sort of people playing 3-minute songs, but sort of with the politics and kind of like DIY attitudes of that punk scene that I knew in high school more.
So what are we thinking? 2000? Is this 2008?
Oh man, this is like 2001. I went to school.
Oh.
I was out there like 98 to 2005. So like that
really?
was
Cool.
So I'm older. So it's I kind of saw. I lived in Portland before they cared so much about food,
Right,
right. Before the hottest new band was actually a restaurant or something like that.
Yeah, totally.
The vibes changed around a little bit, but it's still a great place, and I think it's almost like a regional New York. A lot of people move from other parts of the Pacific Northwest. Like the rest of Oregon can be kind of conservative and not so accepting. So people that grow up maybe like in Eastern Oregon or Eastern Washington or whatever, they kind of move to Portland to meet like-minded people and play music and kind of be in a more supportive environment, I think.
Yeah, I definitely, I didn't even, you kind of see the country through touring, right? And so I'd never even it's hard to say I never knew about East Oregon, but I didn't really catch the vibe of East Oregon until I drove through. Like you're trying to head to Boise, you know? So you have to drive through it. So you're just like, oh, this is like the country out here. It's pretty wild. Because you think it's all like Portland. It's all like Eugene. It's all, you know, it's all like those cities, but it's not.
And back then I think it was even, I don't want to say worse because I'm not putting value judgments on people's lives, but like there would be these ballot initiatives, and like Oregon had this sort of direct democracy ballot initiative thing, which sounds like a good idea, but you know, they'd put these like ballot initiatives that were just like horrible, and you'd have to sort of organize concerts against them. It would be like Proposition 8, should people that are homosexual be stoned to death? And it's like, shit like that. Like so you're like, a crazy, like kind of super regressive, like right-wing kind of ideas. And I remember putting on like benefit shows in Portland to sort of like raise money against that kind of stuff. So there was this kind of push and pull between, you know, Portland, which is a fairly progressive city. I'm not saying it doesn't have problems or nothing like that.
Right.
But then, and also this like really sort of regressive politics of the more rural parts of the state. And I don't know if that dynamic persists to this day, because I think Oregon at this point is, the demographics are such that I think it's not even it's a fairly left-leaning state in general. I think
all drugs are decriminalized.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
That's crazy. It's amazing. Like I'm
not speaking from any self-interest here. I'm just saying it's a good thing for society.
It's a good thing for society. It's like, you know, why waste a jail bed like on someone who just had a small crime? Like these are small crimes in my eyes. Like I don't know.
Yeah, people using drugs are only if they're hurting anyone, it's only like themselves. So I don't see how you know it's anyone's business to like and it doesn't help anyone to go to jail. It just like destroys your life to get in the system, like the criminal record. We've seen it, talked about it a lot, like how enforcement of drug laws it's not even like equal enforcement. It's like
totally, you
know, it's used to target people, communities of color, people that are like socially disadvantaged. So it's not like even like it's a fair shake for everyone. It's those laws were being used in sort of specific ways to keep certain people down. So I'm glad that they're taking that initiative and doing that at the state level. And I just hope more of the country can follow suit and like that and all that, you know?
Yeah. And that whole theory of
we got legal weed in New Jersey, by the way, just a heads up.
That just happened, right?
We've gotten that far. We haven't gotten to the Portland level yet though.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, that's new. I think I saw something like that in New York just legalized marijuana too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a lot of places on the East Coast now. It's like Massachusetts has it legal. Like, you know, I think DC, it's legal even if it's not like retail kind of style. And New Jersey legalized it this last election too, even though we don't have stores yet. A lot of that stuff has to be figured out, of course. But it seems like the general trend is like even kind of, I think even some pretty conservative places have been legalizing it now too, because it seems the one issue that like everyone can agree on or something like that. You know, it's like even like people in Oklahoma kind of are fine with weed. So
it's crazy.
Hopefully it'll be legalized and no one will have to worry about like getting busted by the cops for like having some, you know, weed in their pocket or something like that.
I graduated high school in 2008. And I remember that was like the big talk. Like, will they ever do it? Will they ever legalize weed? And it's pretty wild that we're finally here and it's starting to happen everywhere. And I remember it was like a big thing on tour too. Like, oh, don't bring weed to Nevada, Texas, like all these certain states. Like, and it's pretty wild. I don't really smoke.
Oh yeah. They would have these like they'd have these border stops when you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not even like my personal interest, but there'd be these like border stops in the middle of Texas. It wouldn't even be like at the border. It was like border policing the entire state, which seems, you know, fucked up.
Yeah.
But like it would just be like they'd stop the van and they'd like search it like no reason. Like it's just like they see a van, they see people in it, and it seems like kind of against the spirit of what the laws should be. But yeah, California, you guys have had it for a while. I remember having some bandmates with some serious glaucoma issues that were diagnosed from California.
Yeah, it was always the glaucoma.
I don't want to out anyone, but there's. I was like, man, you're only 28. How are you suffering from glaucoma? So it wasn't that, but it was sort of like a. Yeah,
that was like the move for a while. It was like the bad back, the bad knees, the glaucoma. Like, yeah, that was the move for many, many years in California. Yeah. And
Yeah,
and
so
and,
now at least people can be a little more honest about it.
and that Texas thing is still real, man. I last time I toured Texas was 2019. Same thing. Hey, who's in the car? What are you doing here? Where are you going? It's like I'm driving in the United States. Like, why am I being? I'm not crossing the border into a new country. I'm just crossing through your state, and I'm getting interrogated now. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it's like kind of the whole. I mean, it's like the whole point of like having
a freeway,
a freeway, yeah,
a freeway,
or a highway,
yeah, right.
But
So
yeah. So going on tour it's yeah. So things have changed a lot in a pretty short period of time, which kind of shows. I mean, it's sort of cynically like I understand like the impetus for legalization isn't always about like, you know, social justice or like treating people the right way. Sometimes it's kind of been motivated by money, you know. It's like, like you guys like you have like big like sort of business interests kind of seeing it as a way to make money. And I mean, I guess that's the world we live in, and that does things too. But yeah, like when like, you know, John Boehner, like these like very conservative or erstwhile like conservative politicians are getting behind legal weed, you know, that it's like it's going to be everywhere pretty soon.
Do you think you know, indie rock music in general is one of the only industries that's not driven by money? You know what I mean?
Well,
like,
I'd like to
on the artist
I'd like
level,
to think that. I think about that all the time, man. I think about on some level, like, yeah, man. I was watching like that show Atlanta, and like there's like some line that Paperboy says where he's just like, there ain't any money anywhere near rap. Like this, like the reality of like what people think that world is and what like the normal person participating in it experiences. It's just like such a discrepancy. And I mean, I always think about it this way. It's like, imagine like 5 people, how much money they'd have to make to live in like Brooklyn for a year. And that would have to just be like the net profit of like a band. And you think like no band is really, I mean, there might be some like some really big kind of stuff, which is like all fine, but most bands you see are doing it because they love doing it and because they want to do it, and they're not motivated by it as like I'm playing music because you could make more money working at 7-Eleven, you know. It's like when it comes down to like the motivation why so many people want to do this is just it's probably different for different people, but just I mean, for me, I just have this compulsion to do it. You know, I've always like the thing I've always loved doing most of my life is like being in my room, just playing guitar, writing songs, and the chance to even participate in the quote unquote real world where you get to go play a show and people might come to the show and you get to go on tour and that stuff. That even was like a pipe dream for me up till I was like 27, 28. You know, I was playing in bands that never played shows outside of like our 8 friends in the same, you know, someone's basement, like for outside of our zip code, you know. So for a long time, it wasn't even I wasn't doing it for reasons other than just wanting to do it. And while I get it, like some it's been really tough. There's a lot of factors that you know, like things like record labels have had a really hard time, even indie record labels, because like it costs money to press vinyl and put it out there in the world. And people buy vinyl, it's cool, but like also there's a lot of pressures from streaming and people rightfully, you know, want to listen to all the music of the world as easily as possible. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And you can talk about, you know, who's making money off that streaming thing, and that's like a different issue. But I don't think the general idea of having music readily accessible for a pretty low price to a lot of people without having to physically own a turntable and all that stuff, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. But it's like, I'm doing it for the love, even if that sounds like a cliche. It's like it's what I want to be doing.
I don't think there's anything wrong with streaming. I think the argument's more of like, how can we work it to benefit the artist more? Because I like Spotify. I have Spotify. I use Spotify, but like I do find getting on the record player and just listening to the record, it's an experience you lose. It's like a memory that's like it's unlocked. You're like, oh yeah, side 1. Oh, sit with that. Flip it over. Side B. Oh, I get it now.
Or just listen to one of the sides over and over again because you're too lazy to flip it. Because I'm that guy too. I'll just be like, the first half of Between the Buttons is really good. I think there might be some songs in the other half. I don't know. Once I get to like She Smiled Sweetly, we're going back to track one. No,
right.
You're absolutely right. There is something about that experience with the physical vinyl record. But and that's how I make records. Like I could have put more songs on this record, but I make records so that the amount of songs can fit on like one record in like a straightforward way.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other artists that create in different ways. Like if you're like Drake, it's like you can put like 43 songs in your record and it's a streaming album and it's cool and that's its own way of like getting your music out there. But for me, my ideal is still just like, I just want to make some good songs, put them on one record, and that's the experience of this music. And I know that means less and less to people now, and I don't bemoan changes in how people consume things, but it still means a lot to me. So I'm gonna keep doing things the way I like to do them, and hopefully some people enjoy that as well.
So you do feel and you are aware of the shift and maybe the pressure for artists to kind of start moving towards singles, like even bands, because it's already a thing in hip hop. And like, do you feel that shift? Like we're just going to have to put singles out just like the hip hop artists, because that seems to be working and it keeps you relevant and it keeps you fresh all year round.
Definitely. It's been a little hard with the pandemic, my original, it's hard to get into the studio. There's certain things with, you can do a hip hop track in your house pretty well. Right. Like it's the kind of setup you need to record is a little bit different. So the logistics allow quicker turnaround times in terms of recording the track, getting it out there. If it's all digital, it goes so much faster, and that's cool. And it's something I think about where I'd like to just get out music a little bit more quickly. But there's a lot of factors that go into how I can record. I have 2 small children right now. And so right now this last record I made it in like maybe 7 days, but it took 3 years. It either took a long time to make it or it took a really short time to make it. But it was just trying to find a little time where maybe my mom could look after the kids for a bit. I could sneak into a studio for a day and bang it out as fast as I could. So that's one factor that kind of inhibits the speed of making music. And then the second is, it's like if you want to record with like a real drum set, you kind of need to do that in a studio space. And so there is there like economic pressure or isn't there? It's one of those things where if you're not doing this to maximize like return or profit or thinking in those terms, then there really isn't any pressure to do things other than the way you want to do them. Yeah. So if you're existing in a world where it's like, shit, I need to have like 750 million streams of this record to be a relevant artist, like of this song, then that's like a whole different set of considerations. But if you're just like, I want to write some songs that I like and I'll get them out there when I can. Right. Hopefully there's still people that enjoy that facet of music too.
I think there still are. I think, I was releasing singles leading up to the record and it felt fun and I was like, oh, this is awesome. But there's still nothing like the excitement of the album drop. Like people are excited about the album. People share the album art. Like they don't have that same excitement for singles. So it's just like, oh, cool, another song. But it's like, here's that final piece of art, the thing you've been waiting for. It's like, then I've at least I found on my last album thing, people were more excited the day of the album drop. Not the single drop.
Was it the mid-century modern album?
Yeah.
Or the mid-century modern? Yeah. The album art's great too. Like it's
thanks.
Also there's something about I mean, I know you start to like one starts to sound like, David Crosby or something being like, there's just something about the way we did it in 1968 that's better than the way you do it in 2021. I'm not about that, but I myself still love that. So it's like I'm trying to be. I love what I love, but I know other people love the way things happen in their own music in their own way at the same time, and just knowing that there's all these different worlds, but they're still united by like, I mean, and even in rock, man, it's like the single was the dominant thing in the 60s. Right. It wasn't like even you got to make an album necessarily. You'd like do a couple of singles, and it's like if they caught on, you might get to make a record. But that whole like making the classic album thing, that was just kind of an historical moment in and of itself from like maybe the late 60s to the 70s and onward. And now it's kind of returning to what it once was, which is a more singles driven a world, which is cool. I mean, I'm not like a super jammy person, so there's a part of me that even though my singles don't sound like probably what mainstream radio singles sound like, they're still rooted in that same idea. It should be about like, 3 minutes and have a verse and a chorus and a verse and a chorus and like something you remember, and it's something that's complete in and of itself, not just like, oh, here's an 8-minute jam that you fully understand. It has to be bookended by 2 other songs to make sense. I like the idea of the single too. I feel like it's a cool thing.
That ties into the whole nature versus nurture. Like, what was the kind of music you were listening to that made you think, oh, I like tight pop songs versus like a jam? Because if you grew up listening to the Grateful Dead, maybe you would have became a different kind of artist, And maybe you did grow up with the Dead. Point. I don't know. Yeah.
I feel like I probably should have. Like, I think about the music my mom likes, and she probably likes the Dead too, but she really likes she likes Leonard Cohen and David Bowie and sort of that outlaw country kind of stuff where it's like Graham Parsons. Like, she really liked the sort of bad boy country music, but that was like sort of like Keith, it's sort of like that side of things with like Keith Richards, Graham Parsons, Emmylou Harris, that world she loved. And then my stepdad was super into Tom Petty. Like, to him, it was like Tom Petty was like the greatest recording artist of all time.
Right.
And everything else was just kind of like degrees of separation from that. So I grew up with a lot of classic rock and a classic kind of singer-songwriter stuff. And I don't, a lot of people have like tough relationships with their parents or their mom or whatever, and they kind of reject the music of the previous generation. And they're like, that's wrong. What I'm doing is right. I would say I get along really well with my mom, and I like the music she likes. I've never had this sense of like, your music is bad, my music is like the future. Yeah. We're the future, you're the past. Like, I like is it okay to say that I like boomer music?
Yeah, no, it's very
like
fine.
The arts. I mean, I understand there's like a lot of levels to like understanding this, but at least in terms of like, I dig a lot of classic rock, like Joan Baez, like singer-songwriter stuff, like Joni Mitchell and Dylan and Leonard Cohen and that kind of generation of artists. So I still hold them up into high esteem, even if it's, but not as a way of putting down like contemporary stuff. Just like those are records that mean a lot to me. I like David Bowie, I like T-Rex and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, was something like Leonard Cohen or Bob Dylan like? Did you put an emphasis on your lyrics when you first started? Like, oh, I love them, I want to be a great lyricist, or do I want the lyrics just to fit the melody?
I always thought like, I'm not that great a singer. I don't play guitar all that well. Mm-hmm. But I like songwriting, and I really like writing both the lyrics of the song and then the music of the song. So to me, like, what's always drawn me to is artists that were at their core songwriters. And I mean, Tom Petty's a good example of this. It's like he's not as respected maybe as Dylan or Neil Young. He's always kind of seen as maybe like a step below in terms of stature or like iconic stature or something, but it's just because he came a little later. Sometimes it's not. But he really was he just never wrote bad songs. I mean, he just like had a way of writing a lot of good songs, and he had this like perspective. Like, you could hear one of his songs and it was kind of his like perspective on all of his songs. Like that song where he's like, you think you're going to take her away with your money and your cocaine, but she's going to listen to her heart. He always had this sort of like, I'm not a yuppie, I'm a regular person, and what I stand for is like, maybe I'm not fancy, but like, it's good. And that kind of that worldview was consistent across like almost everything he did. Like, he never really changed. He's never was like, now I'm an old resentful rock star that hates young bands. Like, I mean, there's a couple songs where he gets a little bit like taking some shots at the younger generation, but like for the most part, he's a really generous heart, and he was like a great lover of the history of rock and roll. Like, he was like the Wilburys were like him, like getting to play with his heroes. He was playing with like Roy Orbison and George Harrison and like Dylan, and they all wanted to hang with him. They weren't like, I don't know, it wasn't like he was just their like weed dealer. It was like these people who were themselves held up at the very highest level saw Tom Petty as like a worthy peer to make music with. It wasn't like they were like, oh well, but it's Tom. They were like, he's he's one of us. So I always loved him a lot, and I think it took me later in life to actually come around to Dylan as an artist, other than just an idea. You know, I think sometimes when people become great, their own greatness gets in the way of enjoying their music or approaching their music as just music. It's always like approaching the great man or these gatekeepers of like the historians and the biographers who will tell you what Dylan really meant when he was saying this, or what this personal event in his life happened, and you have to understand that in order to understand this next song. And and you know, as a kid, when I was younger, I just it kind of all went over my head. Or I didn't think it just wasn't my thing. And I found something much more, not that you have to choose, but I found something more immediately resonant about Leonard Cohen. There was just something on that emotional level that just gets you right away. And I kind of, you know, I listened to Dylan, sure, and I liked it fine, but I never really got into it until I had about 5 years ago. My daughter was born. I was spending a lot of time at home, and I found an old live recording of Bob Dylan at the Princeton Record Exchange, and I'm like just a used kind of bootleg copy with like a Xerox. I was like, yeah, I've got the most rare bootleg ever.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It was like actually just like the live at Royal. It was like, it turned out I was like, oh wait, these are the same songs that are on this like live album on Spotify too. You know, it's like you think you got this like real artifact, or like some bootlegger put this out, it found its way into Princeton, New Jersey. It was meant to be. Or, you know, you can put on your, you know, streaming platform of choice and listen to the same songs. But by listening to it without context, or with a little bit of a fresh set of ears or a lot of free time, you just realize that there's just like a real irreverence and joy and humor and vitality to his songwriting, especially that late 60s era, like mid to late 60s era. And it's not about like trying to read the Bible and trying to find the word of God. It's like, damn, this is a dude that was having fun with language and having fun singing about what he was seeing around him at a time. And kind of, sometimes he was a little mean. Sometimes he was kind of funny. Sometimes he was kind of sweet, but it was not just like Nobel laureate, you know. It's like if you could just listen to it as music and understand it like that, it just resonated so much more with me that way than maybe when I was younger, and I just could only see the stature of it, not maybe the thing itself.
The kind of the context around that record and who he was in that moment. And I wonder if that kind of thing will ever happen again. Will people understand the context of where we were in when we made these records, you know? I had like a music reviewer on YouTube, not a big deal. I keep bringing this kid up, but like, he's a sweet kid. I don't really know him, but he like said something about one of my albums, my past albums. It was like, oh, it's kind of cringe. It's so 2000, early 2010s. I was like, yeah, when do you think it was made? It was made in the early 2010s. You don't say that about any other decade. You only associate the early 2010s with your youth, and maybe that's cringy, but we don't do that. Oh, it's so 70s. Ooh, like, it's just like, yeah, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. That's how it works. Like, it sounds like the time it's in, the context.
Well, it's also funny because as an older person, like, I can't, in terms of what I see signifiers of, like, I can't recognize the difference between 2012 and 2006 in the arts. I mean, I could tell you like maybe which bands were kind of big, but if you grew up in those eras, there was like really specific things that were signifying like 2000, if you were a kid 2012 or whatever, what was happening then versus like just even 6 years before. But to me, I'm just like, oh, the Strokes are kind of like a contemporary band, but that was like 20 years ago. You know, it's like, oh yeah, Interpol. And you realize that like these decades have their own visual signifiers or whatever. And I was like watching the Lil Nas X video, and it was like, it felt like purposefully, like the CGI. I mean, obviously the song's great, the story is great, but the visual he chose felt almost like a Hollywood blockbuster, like of sort of early 2000s or something, where it was like the CGI was almost purposefully, it wasn't concealed. It was like, the point of it itself was calling attention to the spectacle of what's possible with CGI. It wasn't just like, oh, we're trying to make this scene in Lord of the Rings more realistic looking, so we're using computers. It was turning that around, being like, we're just showing you worlds that aren't even recognizable, and aren't supposed to look like the world you see it. And it was just like this other, like sort of, and it felt like almost like a retro version of technology in some strange way, because it didn't feel exactly where the visual of 2021 is. Obviously, though, a star using that, it kind of creates the visual of 2021 too, I guess. Like it's all pretty like heady stuff if you think about it, but
totally.
But it was clearly referencing some specific moment that he grew up and he saw, and he the technology that was happening almost felt like a video game, or like something like Halo,
or like Linkin Park.
Or like Linkin Park, yeah, like Linkin Park.
He's trying to capture that vibe of,
and that's and to me, like Linkin Park was like the cheesiest thing happening when I was a kid, and it was like, oh my god, all these songs are about I hate my dad, whatever. Like it was like I'm gonna sing, and then I'm gonna. But now it's like people look back at that and are like, that actually spoke to a certain moment, and like that aesthetic is like a very specific thing. It was like almost like this. At the time, you don't appreciate it, and you think you like cooler music or whatever, and you're like, I'm not into Linkin Park, but then in retrospect, like you're like, actually Linkin Park was pretty cool. Like you hear those songs now, and or even like Third Eye Blind, or there's like things where like. At the time, you weren't like totally feeling it, and now it comes on, and you're in the grocery store, and like maybe that's just how nostalgia works. Like anything from a time in your life, where you're just like, oh yeah, this Third Eye Blind has some jams. In fact, I like this song. I like that. I'm like, maybe I'll cover a Third Eye Blind song or whatever. Like all this stuff kind of like comes back to you, and you're like, actually, this is pretty cool. So
yeah, there's like
Linkin Park.
I've been seeing more and more memes lately on Twitter and stuff that have just been like, you know, when you're younger, wow, this bar is playing my favorite songs. Or no, it was like, when you're younger, wow, the radio's playing all my favorite songs. You get older, wow, this bar is playing all my favorite songs. Now as you're older, you're just like, wow, this grocery store is playing all my favorite songs. Like,
it's just like, this oldie station is playing all my favorite songs. It's like the thing at brunch. It's like it's like the Smith says brunch music or whatever. Like I know it's like a funny thing how these things that were once transgressive or like only the coolest people would be listening to this shit is now like just like in Sephora. You know, it's just like not. Don't get me wrong. I only know because like Pains used to have some songs in Sephora, so I was like, right. You know, they're playing Higher Than the Stars in Sephora. I'm like, cool. Yeah, right on.
Totally.
You know,
that's
we're smashing the state. Maybe.
Yes.
I don't know.
I love it. And you know, that kind of stuff works. Like I have songs playing at every H&M right now. I've never walked inside of an H&M, but like people are tagging me and like DMing me, just heard you at H&M. Like, sick.
Yeah, that's great, man.
I love it. That's cool. It's like, I don't know. I can't control it.
As long as it's not like the... Go ahead.
No, I found a lot of great music that way. I was at Target the other day. I heard a great song at Target. I was like, this is sick.
Oh yeah, no, it's kind of funny, or it's even like kind of funny where like pop kind of catches up with, it knows how to trigger it. Like that moment that I know it's like an old song, but when Kelly Clarkson's "Since You've Been Gone" came out, everyone was like, this is just as good as you know, it's like the kind of shit that we think is so like certain people are like, oh yeah, I like the yeahs, I'm so cool, and then you like hear like "Since You've Been Gone" and you're like, this is just as good, man. Like, and it doesn't have to come from some underground world or like some like you have to be this cool, like you know, like. I don't know. It's interesting to hear like sort of how those songs can get into the mainstream really quickly, and it probably happens even faster in like hip hop. Like underground songs sounds suddenly become like just like in the kind of like in your cell phone commercial all of a sudden. Like you know, it's like the stuff that you might have heard in like Memphis, Tennessee in like 2004. Like the sickest club is now all of a sudden like selling, you know, like your prepaid, you know, like. Your like Virgin Mobile cell phone or whatever. Totally. Like it's able to like move so quickly into more mainstream spaces.
And you know what's so crazy is that they actually did admit, Max Martin did admit he stole "Since You've Been Gone" from the Yeah.
Well, that's good. I'm glad he admitted it.
He admits, he was like, he was basically saying that these indie bands, they write such good songs, but then they don't write great choruses. Like, you know, your classic big commercial chorus. And so what if you took Yeah's map, but gave it like a really great pop chorus? And that's basically what he did. And then basically ripped off that bridge. Like it's literally the same fucking thing. And I guess I know what he means.
It's awesome.
But the chorus for Maps is so good, and like it makes you feel shit that "Since You've Been Gone" like is like such a fist pumper, but like the Yeahs one's like, they don't love you like I love you. I don't need a big chorus for that song. Yeah.
No, I think he might have been referencing the wrong song or something, because like there's nothing wrong with Maps. So like Maps delivers the hook. I mean, like the fact that you can say they don't love you like I love you, and I just like hear it in my head, like that's, and you can feel that works. Like there's more like, I think maybe just like the energy, the sort of the rawness of like the production of like those like early Yeah Yeah Yeahs records and that Fever to Tell kind of era, like kind of taking that energy and putting it around a more like a more professionalized pop structure of like, now here comes the chorus, now here's like the second half of the chorus, like it goes even like bigger than the first half. Like there's like all sorts of like
it modulates, you know, and then it
modulates. There's like a few like sort of like professional songwriter tricks that can take like your normal thing and take it to like the Disney soundtrack level of it. But I listen to a lot of Disney songs. As I said, I have like 2 small children, so I'm always like listening to like these like Disney soundtracks. Actually, the one I've been listening to all the time is My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic.
Oh, cool.
But it's like the songs from that. But my daughter recently discovered that there's like another series called Equestria Girls, where they're like the ponies are people.
Oh, cool.
And they're high school teenagers, and there's like kind of a lot of fucked up stuff about it, like how they're drawn, and it's kind of like, dude, I try to tell her, like, she's 5 years old, I'm like, human beings aren't that narrow. You know, like, it's like there's like different sizes of like, the idea of like whatever, but like the music is like almost like a Roy Katy Perry kind of thing. It's like it's rooted more in contemporary. The original series, the songs are a little bit more show tuney and a little that style, but it's the high school shows where they have like kind of like Katy Perry style like Teenage Dream sounding songs, and I played her Teenage Dream by Katy Perry. I'm like, if you like this, you might like Teenage Dream by Katy Perry.
Did she
like it? To it? She's like, yeah, that's cool. It reminds me of the Person Pony songs. But she could even identify that what I was referencing. It wasn't just like the whole My Little Pony thing. She was like, yeah, this reminds me of this kind of song, which I was like, you're only 5 years old. That's really cool that you're even like able to hear musical elements of one thing and compare it to something else.
This sounds like this and reminds me of that. Yeah.
So if you're asking me what artists have you been listening to a lot lately, and I'd say like, you know, the Rain Booms, you know, or whatever the My Little Pony, because they have like Battle of the Bands kind of things, where like some group like has like sort of like it's sort of like Gem and the Holograms, where there's like the good girl group, and then there's like the misfit kind of girl group where it's like, and they're like competing with song, and like the bad group sings about how like bad they are, and it's actually kind of better than the good group that sings about how good they are. But that's usually how things go anyway. So you kind of always like Satan's always more interesting than God. As we've learned from the Lil Nas X video, like it's better to you're gonna have a lot more fun in the underworld. You know.
Yeah, exactly. That's amazing. And sometimes, you know, those shows commission these like old rockers, like John. I was a big Loving Spoonful fan, and John Sebastian does like most of the music for Care Bears, like. So there's excitement there. I love that.
I don't know the Care Bears music, but I've been sort of stuck on. There was a Gummy Bears TV show, and the theme song is like really infectious, and it's really triumphant sounding. So like, yeah, you never know. Like when older people are just writing for film or TV and doing that kind of stuff, it might be like, you know, some dude from Wheatus is writing all the pop punk like My Little Pony songs, like being like, that's a good gig, man.
Totally, great gig. Like that's like Danny Elfman's life after Oingo Boingo. Just does scores and writes like random jingles and themes.
No, it's cool because like they're clearly really well written songs, and they have to be really short too. So it's like you can't have like a long. It's like really a concise version of songwriting where everything's kind of like a minute and 20 seconds. So,
have you ever
get Tony Molina? Get Tony Molina on the My Little Pony soundtrack. He'd be perfect.
Have you done anything like that? Maybe not on a grand scale, but like maybe like a friend's like art project or something like that.
I'd love to do that. You know, Paynes did get to do a tune for is it called Teletubbies? What was that show where it was like there was it was like one of those shows. I think it was called Teletubbies.
Yeah.
Or no, it was called no, not Teletubbies. What was that show that was like you know, when you see it, it was like sort of like it was kind of like made for both children and very high adults at the same time. But we got to do like some song. They sent us a song to record. And it was about being happy. And like my mom heard, I was in the other room when I was recording it, and she was like, came in and she's like, this doesn't really sound like the kind of songs you write. It's like everybody is happy, happy.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, that's because I didn't write it, but it was cool to be a part of that. And I don't,
Oh.
yeah, I'd definitely always
Wait,
be down to do
do you
anything
remember
like
what
that.
do you remember what so was it for Nickelodeon? Was it for Disney?
It was a Gabba, not Gabba
Oh,
Gabba.
Yo Gabba Gabba?
Yo Gabba Gabba. Yeah, that's what it
Oh,
was.
really? Oh, wow. Yeah, yeah, because Yo
Yeah.
Gabba Gabba, I know that main dude is friends with a lot of musicians, and he's definitely dipping his feet in both worlds of like child education, but also making it access, because they know the parents have to watch it too. There has to be a little bit of something for the parents too, to like grab onto.
Oh, definitely. I definitely skew like my children's like the screen time they have towards stuff that I want to watch too.
Yeah.
Like I'm always like, hey, do you want to watch this like stop motion animation kids show from England in the 1980s? Of course you do. We're watching Postman Pat. And they're like, can't we just watch like Sesame Street? Like, no, Postman Pat's the good shit. Yeah.
There's such a
but yeah,
difference.
it's like always like has a.
Do you notice like a big
go on.
difference like in the child programming from the 80s and the stuff that maybe you grew up on versus stuff that they're growing up on?
Yeah, man. You can almost tell like how quickly it's changing too, because I look at I usually don't like show them stuff from my own. I show them Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood from when I was a kid, and that's
Classic.
that's really interesting because of how slow the show is and
Super
how peaceful
slow.
it is, which I really like. And children's programming now doesn't have that same pacing. Like even Sesame Street now is very segment A, segment B. Now it's Elmo's World. Now it's over. And when I was a kid, Sesame Street was just like maybe it was longer. It feels like Sesame Street has like gentrified in a weird way. Like if you look at old Sesame Street episodes, it resonates much more as an urban environment, like an actual city block where people are just hanging out, and not everything feels so. The pacing feels relaxed in a way. It'll just be people talking on the street and more like sort of psychedelic interludes. But the contemporary version of the show, it's a wonderful show still. But I was reading an article about how because of the cuts to children's programming funding, they have to make their money from merchandising, and you can merchandise toys of Muppets more than you can people. So people are kind of getting pushed out of the show, and they have to kind of focus on what sells. So they're like the Elmofication of Sesame Street. I have no problem with Elmo. Elmo's great.
Yeah.
But it's like Elmo is now front and center. It's like Elmo and this other show behind Elmo. And it does seem a little less, it seems like there is some market forces driving the content, even ostensibly in a show that shouldn't be about that for kids.
Totally.
So like, yeah, the old Mr. Rogers is really cool. And the old Sesame Street, I think, is really cool. But a lot of the old shows, I mean, it's like, honestly, people have come a long way in terms of diversity and representation. And even shows made like 8 years ago still don't feel contemporary. Like, honestly, it's like, even shows from a few years ago, still you're like, wait, why is like all these ponies white? It's like kind of like there's like just stuff where it's like, why is like the one pony that's like, I don't know. It's like, there's like one pony that's a zebra and it's like, is other, and she lives in like this like forest that's like wild and savage, but like the other ponies, it's like, there's like stuff where like, this was only 5 or 6 years ago when this was being made. And now I think if someone was making that show, people would be asking more questions like that. Like, who are the voices that are voicing these ponies? It's like I know I'm talking about ponies, but it's more about representation and kids being able to see themselves in these shows, and just having a baseline of what the entertainment should look like, the world that they grew up in, and the people of this world. So I mean, I think honestly, I don't get too nostalgic for the old shows because I actually think the new shows are going to be, in a lot of ways, a lot better, a lot more representative, and a lot more just like inclusive and cool. And like even My Little Ponies, it seems like, I mean, I know it's definitely there's like some very subtle nods to like non-heteronormative like behavior, but it's like, it's never like, no pony ever has a girlfriend who's a girl or a boy. It's never just like out there in like a normal, cool way. And I think when it was happening, it's just that we've come a long way really quickly. And I'm sure if they're writing another generation of these ponies, like, it wouldn't be about trying to find their girl teacher a boyfriend like an episode. There's like just some stuff where it was just like, these de facto assumptions like that even a few years ago were very normal in our culture. Not saying they should be, but they were kind of color these shows. I mean, even if you go back and look at like some shows like 30 Rock and stuff like that, there's jokes and stuff where you're just like, oh man, I mean, obviously like Liz Lemon's cool. Like, don't get me wrong, totally. Like Tina Fey's a genius, but like, I think even she would probably be writing it differently, or like, or even who would be in the writing room. Like the cool thing about Atlanta is like the writing room is like an all black writer's room. And it's like, there's jokes in there that I don't get. And that's cool, where it's like, they're writing like deep cuts of humor and stuff and no one in that room is being like, but will some guy in New Jersey who's a white man understand like the sauce of this like restaurant, like a special wet sauce for your wings? Like that might not be palatable. So we have to like explain it more, but they don't explain it. And I like that they don't explain it. And it allows like, like jokes to just be written for their own sake and not with the consideration of like appealing to a viewership that has different like cultural references.
Yeah, and audiences aren't that dumb. Like I don't eat meat at all. I haven't eaten meat in like 11 years, but like when I heard, the references to lemon pepper wet, I was like, well, what is that? Well, let me go on YouTube. Oh, okay, there's a whole culture around, strip club food and lemon pepper wet. It just said, many restaurants doing it and doing it well, and it's dry rub, it's wet, it's like there's lots of different. I was like, okay, there's a whole culture here that I had no idea about.
I don't know if you follow basketball at all, but during quarantine, like Lou Williams got in trouble because it was like everyone had to be on their best behavior. And I'm not making light of people breaking quarantine kind of stuff and like putting people's. I'm not like that, but literally he went home for like, it was like sad thing. I think it was like a funeral or something like that.
Oh no!
But he like couldn't resist stopping at like his like the strip club that had like the wings like that were like whether it was like lemon pepper wet or something, like a very specialized type of wing that that was like so irresistible that he basically like might have put the entire endeavor of like
the whole
continuing
NBA.
to play NBA at risk because it was like but they were really good.
It's like.
But that's where I kind of heard about it too. It's like Atlanta, and then like I was like it like connected it, and that's how you kind of learn about stuff too. It's not like I'm dumb. It's like you're saying you don't eat meat, like, but like you can like.
I'll figure it out. I'll get the reference. Like
it's like
or continue watching the episode. Google. Like I can figure it out. Like I don't know, and maybe that's just the kind of viewer I am, and maybe there aren't people who are just like, I don't get that reference, I don't get what this show's about, I'm not gonna watch it. But it's like, then you don't want them watching your show. Like same thing, I don't get this
exactly. Then it becomes it becomes like then like a standard network sitcom. Then it's like then it's like we have to make this so that the largest amount of people can get the most basic knowledge out of it, and that's just like.
And those shows are done. All those shows are dead. They're done. Like who's watching sitcoms anymore? They're so stale and boring.
Yeah, man, they are, and I think there's something about it where like young people. I mean, like, I wasn't, like, watching Friends when it came out. I wasn't like, that's a great show, I got to watch Friends. But there is a generation that wasn't born yet that, like, kind of views it as kind of a weird kind of comfort food because, like, nothing bad happens in a weird way.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
like you can kind of have that on as, like, a way to sort of, like, well, I'll just put on Friends and nothing bad will happen. It's not almost like, you're not seeing, you're almost like, you're like watching it as almost like a balm more than like an actual like, oh, I want to engage with this and like see what's going on here. But it's like funny though too. Like I think about Atlanta and I think about like there's characters that are recognizable in other shows too. It's like Darius is Kramer. It's like these are like they are analogs. Like obviously it's different, but there is like even if you think you're watching something super different, there's like there are analogs where you can be like, wait a second, man, that's like that is the friend that's always like, yo. Don't sell that here. I can get you more money for that. I know a guy. Like I know a guy. That's like a universal thing.
Totally.
So, but yeah, but I'm still on. See, go on.
Oh no, go ahead. Go. Say what you're gonna say.
No, I didn't. I know. You go.
I was gonna say that the way people consume art now too is such in a completist, full plate way where they don't remember. Like The Office is so big. But people don't remember, like, there's a time people stopped watching The Office because it either wasn't good anymore or, like, Steve Carell left and what are we doing here with this show? But people forgot that, and now it's all good. Every season's awesome. It's like, it's not all good. And I'm like that with music. Like, I remember I just did an interview with KCRW and I was talking to them about Tim Buckley. They're like, how did you fall in love with the later Tim Buckley? Like, no one talks about his, like, funk stuff. Well, I LimeWired all of his albums. Oh no, I torrented. It was past LimeWire. I torrented all of his albums. I absorbed everything at once. I didn't understand the context of his folk period, the avant-garde jazz to the sex funk. Like, I just thought it was all, I just absorbed it all in that way. And I think people do that a lot now with television as well, especially with The Office, because now the context is gone. Every season's awesome. Just put it on.
Yeah, man. It's kind of cool. Like, it's kind of the fantasy that I think a lot of these artists used to have of like bypassing gatekeepers for better or for worse. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm the kind of person that like probably sympathizes to like record reviewers, like that mindset of the person who sits there and evaluates the worth of the new record and like says all these things about it. Like I am that person on some level, okay. But I'm also understand how that person being taken out of the equation and people just getting music and making their own opinions is awesome. I still like to go back and like read about like some albums, or like sometimes when a catalog is, I mean, you just like got it all and you're just like
right
straight to the dome. But sometimes I'm like, okay, where do I start with fucking Yellow Magic Orchestra, man? Because like This is like, there's like a ton of stuff, or like even like, yeah, like that dude that was eventually was in it. He made some records before it. Like, which one's the quote unquote, where should I start? Like, I don't want to say the good one, but like, but there is like some stuff where it's still nice to have a little bit of editorial context to what you're listening to and kind of learning the stories of the people making it. But I think it is the great dream of those artists that they would just be able to have their music, a future generation hearing it without like through the filter of like whether it got a 7 out of 10 or like a 4 out of 10, or like if it got good reviews at the time or not. Like people can reappraise it and like understand it in its own terms. I think, I don't even know. I mean, I don't even listen to the Style Council, but I just remember as a kid, everyone's like, oh, the Style Council is not the jam. It's not good. But I bet you there's like kids now that will just like,
they're so
listen
good.
to it and not be like, oh, well, or what's that? Yeah. Like it's like the context or like what's considered cool changes so much. Like the idea, if you told me when I was a kid that Enya would be cooler than the Pixies,
right,
it would have blown my mind. Or in 20 years, you know what the music that you're listening to that's going to be considered important? The music that's playing at the like the Persian French cafe where you're having a scone with your mom before school, like that Save a Whale song that's playing, even though it's a Sail Away, but you thought it was Save a Whale.
Totally.
Like that's like Orinoco Flow was just on repeat forever, and I was just like, man, this new age music, that's not cool. Nirvana and the Pixies are cool, but then in like 20 years, it's like it's totally juxtaposed. Where you're like, you know what, like the Pixies, like they did their thing, and Nirvana was obviously like really important, but like Enya was the shit that was happening then that you really should have been paying attention to.
Totally.
And there's so many examples of that where it's like Sheryl Crow is like more influential than like Nirvana, not like Nirvana, but like there's like these people that were seen as sort of adult contemporary artists, or like the like Natalie Merchant, or these things that were like, and now are like totally in vogue. Like you listen to like new artists like Soccer Mommy, and like even what's her name, who like did she's like really famous, Miley Cyrus had a song that sounded like just like that like Soak Up the Sun song. I was like, this is just like the sweetest 1995 like Sheryl Crow jam, and like that's not to take anything away from it. I was just like, she's referencing something that I like at the time was just like, if you're like in your car with your parents and they put on their stuff, you're going to be listening to that. And then having a new generation come back and find inspiration from that. And like, that was cool. And maybe like, Alice in Chains wasn't that cool in retrospect. I don't know. Like, it's like stuff that's like, I'm very mad all the time.
Totally.
Kind of music. It's interesting to, it's interesting to see how those ideas flip around and like what's considered cool in the future. And even a lot of the music with my old band that I liked, like a lot of 80s, Scottish and English, like sort of like post-punk, like indie pop stuff. Like those bands got it's like, I know this because I've like looked it up, but those bands got like literally made fun of every time they put out a record. It would just be like, oh, fucking Heavenly, they're so shambolic, they're worthless people, they don't rock like a real rock band. Like all these bands, and there was like a lot of politicization of that because it was like sort of more music made like there was like more women in that scene, and so it was kind of like this old kind of like rock critic was just like, oh, you're not like Gang of Four, you're not real, like kind of shit happening. But like now all those bands that I love, you just have to keep in mind that at the time when they came out, everyone was like, fuck these bands, or like they're not important, or like this isn't this isn't like, the kind of music that really quote unquote matters, but it matters to me. And like in retrospect, it was actually the cool shit that was going on, not just like the 800th like group of dudes trying to be like Joy Division,
Right. Yeah. And I think the music review, at least for me and how I see the world and how to release music, is kind of dying, if not gone. Like at least for me, when I discover new music, I just hit play and I make a decision for myself. And either I don't like it or I like it, or I don't like it and I like it later after a few more listens, or there's something interesting. Oh, that's kind of interesting. That little riff or that little thing that carries me. Okay, I'll try it again, and then it latches on. But I also find that music reviews are very good for young people who haven't made up their mind or maybe don't know what they like yet. Pitchfork came in a weird time in my life where I was turning 18. I didn't know what I really liked. I liked Dr. Dog. Is there more music like that? I go on Pitchfork. Pitchfork hates Dr. Dog. Okay. Where do we go from here? Okay.
They're more cat power people.
Totally. Yeah. It's like, it's kind of like
woof.
And I feel like that's what reviews are good for. Kids who are like 18, just finding indie rock or just finding hip hop, and they want to listen to Anthony Fantano and get his take. Me at the age of 30, I don't need anyone's take. I know what I like, I know what I don't like, and I know what I want to be challenged by. So, and that's part. And
there's a couple writers.
Yeah,
there's a couple writers that there's like a couple writers that I'm like for whatever reason, this woman Quinn Moreland, who writes for Pitchfork, she kind of writes reviews of like records. Whenever she writes something, I check it out because like it's usually kind of stuff that's in my current like what I'm into. It's sort of like singer-songwriter, like a little like folk rock like overlap, and like either new people or old people. But I'm always like, I know her taste, and I'm always just like, yeah, if I see her name next to the review, I'll definitely like check that out. Which in a way, it's almost like I'm in like my second youth. Like, so you're saying like when you're a kid, you don't totally know what's cool yet. And it's like, I remember like reading like in the Philadelphia Inquirer, like it was 2 record reviews, like when I was like, I don't know, 14 or something. And it was like Papas Fritas and Yo La Tengo Electro Pura. And they both got like kind of good reviews. I was like at the UCD shop, and like I found like a used version of like one of them, and I got the other one new at CD or whatever. And I really enjoyed it. So it was like, for me, it was like a sort of a pathway towards, because I was only kind of familiar with like punk and hardcore, so I didn't really know what indie rock was. Like my friend gave me his Pavement tape or whatever. Right. I was like, I don't know if I like this or not, but like when you're at that age, you just keep listening to it anyway. And then you get kind of a certain point where you don't need the gatekeeping so much anymore. You kind of can trust yourself. But now I'm getting so old that maybe I need the crutch again. I mean, I might need someone to be like, who's my young cool friend? And I'm like, what's cool? Like, it's my mom always writes me, like she's like a real NPR mom, so I was like, cool. So I always try to get her like an album each year. I'm like, but she's like definitely on that like Big Thief kind of like that kind of album is always like the sweet sort of like indie folk, but like with like a sort of a hint of a bit more malice underneath. A little edge, yeah. It's like not like the super pristine stuff, like totally. But it's always but like for her, I'm her like conduit to like what's cool, and like for me it's like I don't know,
now
like some
you
younger
need someone
friends,
even
like,
younger than
hey,
you.
Man. Yeah, I'm like, hey man, so,
can you show me something I can
like
show to my mom?
Yeah, it's like exactly, it's like this circle. But I mean, that's ultimately the greatest kind of, I mean, record reviews are just stand-ins for having cool friends, because if you have friends or like older sister, older brother, like something like that, like that, they're always kind of like, I remember in high school, like again, like I didn't know a ton about punk rock, but like my friends would just always like take me to like go see Converge or whatever, and I'd be like, this is scary, I guess it's good. Like it's like this is a good version of, I think you can kind of start to evaluate it. It's like this version of scary is a good version of scary. Like I can tell like that when they're just screaming dead over and over and again, I think it's about how they feel dead inside. Like it's like an expression of the inner pain, not like a desire to kill, but like more about like how they feel. Yeah. But how they feel. So in a way, like I can relate to this in some way. But yeah, like I kind of needed my own like hand holding through like some of those shows of like that punk and hardcore and emo world too. So like, yeah, and then getting into like indie music, yeah, it's like you just kind of you do kind of when you start having the internet, you can get so much so fast that it's nice to sometimes have not like a filter, but someone kind of pointing you in the right direction at least.
Yeah, totally. Cool. So we've been talking for an hour. Let's talk about the record. Let's sell this record, baby. How do we sell this record? So you said you wrote it for 3 years, but you recorded it in 7 days. Like, what was the recording process?
No, I mean, I didn't write it for 3 years. I just it's like so funny. So like in 2016, I moved to Princeton and I recorded the last record for my old band, The Pains of Pink Pure Heart, in like January. And my daughter was born in April. And then I moved to Princeton. So I didn't even put out that Pains record for about a year and a half because I was just home with her, looking after her. My wife works. And we had a good time. We walked around Princeton a lot. I spilled coffee a lot, but not on her, just on myself.
Right.
And it was cool. And it was sort of like 2017. It went out. We did a little touring. Then I recorded EP of songs after one of those tours, and kind of like the last Pains tour. My friend had a little studio space, and he invited me over. My friend Andy Savers, and he was like he recorded the Pains stuff too. And he's like, "You got some new songs?" I'm like, "Yeah, I got some new songs. Like, how are we gonna record them? Should we get some drums and like what tempo or whatever?" He's just like, "Here's a guitar. Here's an amp. I'd like you to sing your song and play them." It's sort of like, just do that. We'll push record.
Yeah.
And then we'll go. Yeah. And then that's
we'll build
it.
around
like,
that. Yeah.
Well, but then I was like, yeah, we'll build around that. And then I just did it. He's like, okay, you're done now. I was like, that was just me playing guitar and singing. And there's no like other stuff on it. He's like, yeah, it's pretty cool. Right. And I was like, I guess like sort of like I never thought of making music that way. Cause like with my old band, there's always this sort of expectation of like, not like more, but like always, all right, now we're going to like overdub a guitar part and then put a keyboard part on it and try to like make it big sounding. And this was just literally the sound of me singing and playing guitar at the same time. So then when we did the record together in 2018, we basically just kind of did that, but with like some drums and bass on it too. We were all kind of playing live together. And I'd never really recorded that way myself before. Yeah. It was always like on a metronome, and like you do the drums and you do the bass. But by doing it live, it had a lot of sort of human imperfection on it, but in a good way. It was just sort of, maybe the song sped up a little or slowed down. I don't know. But like they had a good feel to it. And yeah, it was like it connected with like the human beings making it. And it was also a lot faster that way too. Like I mean, you're a musician. I saw you playing live, and it seems like you play with some pretty crack musicians. So it's like maybe you guys can like knock it off all like one take, like smash it out like really fast.
We didn't do it that way. No way.
For me, like, but yeah, it was like kind of faster too. I have 2 small children. When I'm done here, I'm gonna go pick them up from preschool, and yeah, so I didn't have a lot of time, and we just tried to record as many songs as quickly as possible all together in a room, and that was basically the album. And but then like it was like 2018, and like my second son was born like the day I came home, finished the record. Like he came a little early, so I was like driving home from New York late at night, eating French fries from McDonald's at like 2 a.m, and then driving a little more. So I'm about just didn't want to fall asleep, right? Then the next day, my wife's like, I think it's time. I'm like, well, he's not due till like another couple of weeks, but he was coming. So we went to the hospital. We had a baby, and then so kind of had to shelve the music for a bit. And then when I was then I got it done, got the record done, got the art done. It was going to come out. And then, the pandemic happened. So that was obviously a bigger concern to the world than just simply some dude's indie rock record not coming out and being able to tour. But then we had to put it away for another year or so. And now it's coming out now. But it's been a long time.
What date?
April 2nd, 2021.
Ooh.
So I don't know if this is airing later, if this is live, but
I might miss it, but I can maybe try and squeeze it in the same week if you want.
It's okay. Like, just so you know, it's when we're talking, it's this week, but if you post it up later, it came out on April 2nd, but you can still get it.
All right.
On your whatever internet places you buy stuff, or your local record store, or like stream it or whatever, do whatever you want. So yeah, it like took a really long time to get it out there, but it didn't take a really long time to make. It wasn't like I was like laboring over it this whole time. I was just kind of like waiting. But everyone's kind of been in that situation for a bit, and between babies and global pandemics, I've been busy. So So I'm excited that it's finally, it's funny. My kid was like, when I was recording it, was like born, and then he's like 2.5 years old now. My daughter's 5. I've lived in Princeton like 5 years, and the record's finally coming out there in the world. So it's cool. I'm
That's
excited
amazing.
for it.
And so there's a lot of different learning. I guess Pains was always, to a click, and now it's live. You had to hold on to this record. You had to kind of prolong the Pains record, it sounds like, too.
Yeah, so I was just kind of used to like the living without the gratification of getting it out there as soon as you can. And it's even now, like I was talking, like, I don't know what but like it seems like touring and playing shows and stuff like that inside probably isn't going to happen until next year, so it's going to be even another year of kind of waiting around before I can really share these songs with people, but in the live setting at least. So I would say I've had a lot of practice, waiting around. So it's hopefully like one more year isn't going to kill me. And, I'll still have some hair on my head, and I won't be like too old man, like, oh, my back's too sore to rock.
To rock.
I know hopefully I'll still be able to rock.
I'm sure you'll still be able to rock. Done. No, I'm hearing October.
if I ever could rock.
I'm hearing October. I'm hearing if you can't play like at least a local show in your area by October, then early 2022. That's at least what I'm hearing. And maybe like a small thing, like a small little run,
I think some outdoor stuff's going to be possible outside. In fact, I'm even doing an outdoor thing this Sunday.
Oh, really?
It's like in New York. There's like outdoor thing. It's like the guy that puts out my records, K9 Records, like that guy works at a brewery. And they're having a little, it's like, I don't know if it might even be just like open mic night, but he invited me down to play some songs Sunday afternoon. He's putting out a little concert, and like people wear masks to be outside. I think like if people are outside and wearing masks, it's like a pretty safe thing. And, I think I'm bringing my kids, like it'll be fun for them to see what I do.
And more and more people are getting vaccinated now.
I mean, I got it's like everyone's, it depends where you live and access you have and in your crib. Like, it's like, a lot of people I know have been vaccinated already, and I hope to be soon. So it's all that stuff's really important. And what you're saying, there might be like little things, but even when things resume, there's going to be a backlog of bands that had all their stuff canceled that probably have first dibs on it too. So even if it's like, all right, we can open up some venues. Well, a lot of the venues didn't survive, which is sad. So there's like less places to even play, and then all those people that had stuff that was booked already that got canceled, they probably have first dibs on it. So even the timeline of actually being able to like, play out is going to be kind of contingent on both the health and then like letting everyone who had, wait your turn. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like I'm talking to my kindergarten kids, like, all right, it's his turn now. You had your turn, but now it's not my turn yet. It's, the band that was supposed to go on tour last summer's turn or whatever. But in the great scheme of things, like I don't want to be on the side of people complaining about like indie rock plans being hampered a bit, because everyone's experiencing this, everyone's going through this, everyone's had their lives affected by it in some way, and I'm just kind of worried that there's going to be a whole year of artists like pretending like they were the only ones who suffered, being like, it was so hard was when like I was going to put out my record, but then I couldn't do it, and I had to wait. And that's really painful. It's like, come on, dude, like everyone's affected. And like, at least if you're making records and like the people that like really are affected, the ones that work in the venues themselves, like if you're doing sound, like bartending or whatever, like that's where it hits hard. Like if you're like making music, you can still write songs in your house. You can still do some live stream stuff. You can still do maybe some open air stuff. Like it's, I mean, obviously would it be nice if there wasn't a cataclysmic pandemic that like killed lots of people and like ground our life as we know to halt. Like, yes, but like the effect on indie rock bands is like, I mean, it's like I'll wait in line to complain. There's a lot of people who have a lot more to complain about. There's a lot of people ahead of us
to complain. Yeah,
like people that obviously it's like this is like a life or death thing, and I'm alive, so like that's kind of the most important thing.
Yeah, that's definitely the most important thing to me is that I only know 2 people who got the virus. My immediate family, we didn't get it. Like, it seems like if we could just stay the course, we survive this thing, then that's very good. And I get my second shot on Wednesday. What else
Nice.
have what else have I been hearing? There's gonna be a big emphasis that like when venues do open up again, that they need to have sellout shows. And I don't know if I want to be put into that pressure of like, hey, we booked Dante and they didn't bring anyone. Like,
I know
the
the joke with indie pop is like we've been social distancing shows forever, man. Like we're used to it. It's like, all right, 18 people in a 100 cap venue, we're fine. We can space it out. That's like classic Pains, you know.
It's like always like one of those things where
I think there's so many times when this is like sort of like self-effacing. I shouldn't say it, but like people would come to our shows sometimes. They're like, and they'd always like be like, I thought there'd be more people here or something.
That's the worst.
Outside, they think because maybe like we got a lot of like online like attention or something like that, or like there was like a kind of well-known name, but like like I just remember like being in Glasgow and there's an exchange student from Japan like who thought like Pains must have been like the hugest band in the world, and he came to a show and it was kind of like like 3/4 full, like like, I thought there was going to be more people here. And it's always like that thing where it's like, no, it's kind of, but this is good for us. Like we were disappointed. We're like, yeah, it's like pretty full. It doesn't look too sad. People come close to the stage. Like you can't see that far back anyway with lights in your face. Like,
oh
it's fine.
my God.
Like,
it's
from our
awesome.
point of view,
we feel good.
in our scene, we're like the Rolling Stones. Like, so like in the world of indie pop, like we're doing really well, so don't feel bad for us.
Oh hell yeah, dude, that's amazing. Well, I'll let you go. Get ready, pick up your kids, dude. Thank you so much for talking. Your album comes out April 2nd. K9 Records. What's the best way for people to support you, your band Pains of Being Pure Heart, your new project? What's the best way?
Oh man, just buy stuff off the internet from us if you want. But if like it's like you're supporting someone, man. Like if you like go down to your local record store and buy it, like that's helping them, man. It's like that's like those are important people that need to be supported too. So like this whole idea of like, no, I want 100% of the money from where I go, because it's like it's like there's a lot of people that work in music, whether they work in distros or like venues or what. Man, just if you can buy it from someone. I don't even care. Like you don't have to like buy it from me. Just like, if you exchange money for it, it'll go towards someone's electricity bill and keeping things going. But I'm not a charity case. I'll be okay either way.
So what you're saying is no guest list when shows come back.
No, man. I saw this thing where I saw no guest list. Don't go to shows at like corporate venues. I'm like,
yeah.
I love all that. But I was like, dude, anyone that's working right now in music, like whether you're working at a concession stand at Madison Square Garden for like the Kings of Leon show or whatever, like it's all that stuff still important. Like that's someone's job, and don't make value, or you can make value judgments. Of course, it's like supporting like local DIY arts communities is like really important. But this idea that like people's like value in society is less if they like their job is working at this kind of venue versus someone's job who's working at that kind of venue. I think support what you can support, but like, man, I also realize like people are kind of broke right now. So it's like, if you have to ask to be on the guest list, like, man, like, I don't care, man. Like I just want people to get out there and play and not finger wag at people. Everyone's trying to do the best they can. Everyone's trying to like support music the best they can. Not everyone has like $30 to buy a vinyl record from like, it's like all that shit's expensive now. This whole idea of like buy vinyl from your indie retailer. It's like, yeah, like, but like, I remember when I was a kid, like you could buy a bunch of records for like $20, like, or you could get a lot of things or use stuff. And now everything like vinyl is like really expensive, and it kind of limits the kind of people that can interact with that and like collect records. Like the idea of buying like if a record collection, like let's say your record collection is 10 records, but if you buy them new, that's like basically $300. So it's like, I don't know, man. Like I love vinyl. Like I think it's cool. I'm all about it. But like, man, even if you like pirate my shit off like LimeWire, like I don't care. Like just as long as you're enjoying music and you're like part of this world in whatever way you want to be, that's all that matters to me.
Hell yeah. Well, dude, thank you so much, man. And have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.
Peace, Dante. Thank you so much.
See ya.